Good morning for the third time on Thursday morning. I thank God I am back in the land of the living and done with my 7 nights work and enjoying my days off. And isn't this something? Hey, I'll be 77 come October, and I have the privilege and the honor of having a job. It's not a normal job. Not normal at all. It is a job that pays well, really well, and I never had much to do with unions before I came north to try to save the ranch, and that didn't work out well. But thank God the woman's gone too, and Mm, I wish I hadn't have killed my horse before she left, but nonetheless, and so the ranch is gone, and my sense of humor survived. That's kind of hard to believe, but anyways, I have a mission in life. Oh, so far today, it's to start this video. Perhaps God will let me see this one through, and but I do know that the last two videos were poignant and purposeful for what God had has on His agenda for the day. Um, I am uh, a sworn uh, independent Albertan, and uh, I I left Eastern Canada 48 years ago, and I never looked back. Well, I miss scuba. I miss snorkeling uh, out there in about 20 foot of water, 25, 30 feet of water around the giant rocks at a little place called Woodland Beach. And I used to go down there with my fins and snorkel, mask, and I'd swim out mm, several hundred feet and get into water that's about 20 foot deep and uh, come across rocks, boulders out there about the size of a garage, and oh, the entertainment when you'd go down to the bottom and circumnavigate that swim around the bottom in the shadows and look at the fish. Huge things. They appeared to be in the water anyways. They sure were big, and so I miss that aspect of Ontario. That's the only aspect that I miss. Okay, unless it's making maple syrup, and I enjoyed that as a kid and that sort of thing. But here we are in Alberta, and we're in the throes of trying to get the sheep herded in a direction that would give the sheep freedom. And Alberta's freedom is dependent on Alberta. Uh, I've been told the bill of goods about Native people having a veto. Yeah. And oh yeah, I've been told all this stuff about Treaty 6, 7, 8, and I've kind of made it a personal a game that I play uh, with myself because I'm kind of a loner, and and this is the summation of the game. I I I look for people whom I know to be First Nations. Uh, we used to call them Indians. Okay, Indians. Feathers, not turbans. Okay, and and I asked them. Uh, you know. Tell me uh, what your perception is of the chance that Alberta will become independent from Canada, the corruption, the evil uh, of Canadian federal politics. And they say, it'll never happen, eh? Never, never happen. And I say, why? And they said, well, we Indians, we have veto rights. We own this land. And I look at them. They say, oh no, yeah, really? We own the land. I mean, look at the treaties, they say. And I say, have you ever bloody read the treaties plural, that you promote as being giving you veto power, giving you ownership of all crown land in Alberta, giving you uh, the right to say, hey, we're going to protest. Hey, uh, if the government doesn't do what we want, we're going to protest. Well, um, First Nations, Indians, they represent extreme and extraordinary power. Uh, it's not the power that they think. It is the power of a complete block of voters. That's the only power that First Nations people have, is their commercialization of their own personal voting. And that's why federal Canada has been kissing the arse of every chief. Uh, uh, the Canadian federal Canada, they don't give a rat's ass about the reservation Indians because no one else cares about them either. Not the chiefs, not the native political organizations that are just so concerned uh, about using the money right that comes from uh, Canada last year. Last year, $30 billion was donated, paid to, uh, for the purchase of votes to the Canadian Indian organizations, tribes all over the place. Okay. But federal Canada don't give a rat's ass about Indians, really. They care about a block of voters who, no matter what, the Indians are going to uh, feathers. Okay. The Canadian uh, uh, Indians are going to vote for the Liberal government in Ottawa because the Canadian federal government has taken the treaties that were signed, duly signed 100 years ago or whatever, and they, as a federal government, have said basically, doesn't matter that you Indians sold your land to the Queen. It doesn't matter that the Queen agreed to take the land in lieu of paying each and every Indian a flat sum per year. If you have never received an education on the Canadian uh, treaty treaties signed between the Indians and the Queen, you should. And if you ever want a comprehensive understanding of what those treaties actually say, you have got to look up a man who I have learned to respect, not just because he's told me what I wanted to hear, but he has a YouTube channel. It's called Native Way Chronicles. Okay, let me say that again. Native Way Chronicles. And he has delineated he 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 has taken every single treaty that was ever signed by Indian people, again feathers, okay, Indian people, and the Queen's representative uh, from a long time ago, and he's delineated them. He has read it honestly. Um, I I I don't remember his name. Okay, that doesn't matter. I mean, shoot, in the Old Testament, it spoke of a man who had saved the city he lived in with his wisdom, and saved the city from destruction. And and the scripture says, and no one remembered his name because he was a poor man. Well, um, this man, he's the Native Ways Chronicle. He's a trapper. He's a hunter, married to a wonderful, pleasant First Nations lady, and he has gone to work and has explained exactly what was stated, said, and meant uh, in such an intelligent manner, and I carry on my game of asking every Indian that I know, uh, have you ever read the treaties? No, we haven't. I said, why? Well, everybody knows what the treaties say. We own the land. We're Indians. We're First Nations Indians. And I say, dear Lord God, help these people understand that you need to know that they need to know what the treaties actually say. Do you know what the Indians who signed the treaties from two over in Manitoba, right through to eight? Six and eight is closest apparently to Fort Mac. But do you actually know what those Indians did to you Indians? Do you have any idea? I'd like to suggest you don't have a bloody clue. Uh, because those Indians, chiefs, sub chiefs, representatives of the regular reservation Indians, sold all of Alberta except about 3% of the land. Uh, the Canadian federal government still owns the reservations. And I'm just bloody betting that the Canadian federal government is really proud of that. I mean, they own the land on which the reservations rest abide, and they don't even have clean drinking water. They live in squalor. They don't even have decent housing, and they don't. But Canadian federal government owns those reservations in Alberta. Yeah, BC is a different thing. BC got screwed over because they were intentionally setting their province up for failure, and uh, it's just the way it is. Uh, but uh, do you know that federal, the federal Canadian globalist government only owns the reservations and the military bases that belong to the Canadian Army and whatever Navy. That would be the two ships mm, uh, in the mall in Edmonton. Oh crap, that's funny. But anyways, so the Canadian federal government owns the reservations and the military bases, and I'm real sure the national parks. Okay, that's all. You know that, my Indian friends. Do you know that? That is true. Studied the treaties. Do you know why? Because I've had Indian friends of mine say there will never be an independent Alberta, a nation, independent nation within Canada, never, because the Indians won't let it happen. Ready? Your original chiefs and sub chiefs sold the land, crown land, all crown land, except reservations, army bases, and national parks, sold all crown land to the Queen. You know what you had to pay for it? Do you know? Well, let me tell you. Uh, the highest paid Indian uh, at the time of the signing of the treaties, received, get ready for this, $12 per person. You might say nowadays, you'd say, well, that $12 per person, that'd have to be six times a day even to come close to surviving. No, it wasn't. It was $12 a day per Indian per year. And part and parcel of the treaty was uh, if Indians chose to farm and become integrated in with the rest of the Queen's subjects, Albertans, which they actually weren't even, I don't think even called Albertans at the time, but nonetheless, I'm not a historian. I'm just an old cowboy. Okay. Do you know that if an Indian family wanted to farm, the Queen would give them 160 acres per family, and the Queen would give them mule, oxen, a plow, uh, uh, some other equipment that would enable them to farm their land. Remember, this was back a long time ago, okay, and uh, and so on. And the chiefs and sub chiefs back then sold all their rights to Western Canada for $12 a person. And by the way, some of the tribes they didn't get the big payout. It was $12 per person per year. Some of the tribes only got $5. Well, the chiefs got 25. Sub chiefs got 15. Isn't that interesting that chiefs and sub chiefs, they're still getting paid a whole lot more than the average Indian living on the average reservation where they don't even have clean water to drink. Good friend. kind of a good friend. He's a dozer guy. I sometimes don't even think he likes me. Yeah, he's in good company. I sometimes don't even like myself. I asked him, I said, you ever read, study the treaties, treaty 678? He said, no. And I said, well, why not? He said, because. Okay. Quite often that requires something else to be said behind it, because. Mm, I guess it's kind of like in Canada. You say, uh, hey. I said, man, the first time you sit down and study the actual real treaties, you're going to puke. He looked at me. I said, I'm not kidding. Hey, I've been told this bill of goods, and this tribe owns this whole section, and I've been told that the oil sands are all owned by one band, or whatever. Sorry, not if you read the treaty. The treaty says that natives have the right to hunt and fish and trap anywhere they want in Alberta. My Indian friends will go crazy and say, oh, that's true, that's true. But then the Queen continues on in her treaty with the Indians, which was signed, and she says, unless uh, what my Indian subjects want to do will interfere in any way with the rest of my subjects. And the Indians say, well, what the hell do you mean by that? Well, let's look closer. The Queen said, uh, Indians have the right to hunt, fish, and trap anywhere they want, unless her other subjects, mostly white people, uh, uh, were using the land, needed their land. And then the Indians weren't allowed to be there. Well, yeah, they could travel through, but they couldn't set up trap lines in downtown Calgary or downtown Edmonton. Okay, no, not allowed. Why? Because the Queen had this unique and wonderful idea that if Indians wanted to become integrated, oh, I don't mean like immigrants nowadays who come to our Canada to give the Liberal federal government a greater, larger voting bloc. Immigrants who have no intention of integrating, and not like us Irish, we Irish, who came to Canada to integrate, to become part of Canada. Uh, well, if we had known that becoming part of Canada would end up being part of modern day Canada, we would have sure as hell stayed in Ireland. No, we probably would have come anyways because the oppression of the British was so great. Okay, Indians, according to the Queen, according to the treaty, were absolutely 100% equal to any other person living in Alberta at the time of the signing of the treaties, except Indians, she said right in the treaty. If my Indians are well behaved, everything will go good. But if my Indians are not well behaved, and if they disrupt things, if they uh, go to war, if they fight, Queen said they're not allowed to fight. Okay. Listen, children, my native brother, I said, you haven't even read the bloody treaty? He said, no. And I said, well, you guys lose everything. He looked at me. I said, well, you do. You have the same vote that we have as immigrants from 1857 have here in Alberta. You have one vote. We have one vote. And he said, is that it? I said, that's it, son. I mean, that's it. If you were an Indian who wanted to remain on the reservation at the time of the signing of the treaties, you were allowed access, not ownership, access to 1 square mile of bush. Yeah, as I said earlier, if you were wanting to become integrated and become a farmer like the rest of the people who lived in the province at the time, you were allowed 160 acres. That's all. That's all. Well, I, I, I've studied uh, politics. Hey, I was a rancher, eh? I didn't have bulls, but I had the same stuff on the ground. It looked like that stuff. Uh, and that's what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with a Canadian federal government who buys votes. And they bought First Nations, Indians, and they're still paying. Oh, dear Lord God in heaven. Federal government's paying. Why? Because they need the uh, Indian voting bloc. Okay. No self-respecting, intelligent Indian is going to tell anyone if they ever voted for anything other than the federal liberals. Okay, federal globalist liberals. There's another group down east. Uh, I want to say this very meaningfully. The tar sands, the oil sands, used to be called tar. There was tar. They used to come north from Edmonton and pump that into tankers and take it back down to Edmonton and uh, and coat the streets with the tar out of tar lakes, oil, bitumen, tar, everything, just sitting on the surface. The group I speak of are the East Coasters, the heavy equipment operators who I've learned to respect for the most part. I mean, really, seriously, because the number of East Coasters here in the north, it's amazing, and the language that they speak is, oh dear Lord, amazing. I had a good friend. Oh, his first name is Martin. I won't say his last name. I said, Martin. He said, yes. Oh, we love the Lord. Yeah, each of us loved the Lord with our whole hearts. And I said, Martin, when you went to school, okay, on the East Coast, he said, yeah, Newfoundland. He said, I went to school in Newfoundland. I said, Martin, uh, did they offer a course uh, in school, especially high school, but in school, called English? He looked at me. I said, Martin, you don't speak English, son. Okay. East Coasters, they don't speak English. They speak Newfoundlandese, which is a form of English, but it's more slang. A wonderful supervisor pulled me off my truck one night and told me to get down and get into his truck and I climbed in. He said, "Could you just tell me why why you did not do what that dozer operator said. He said, how long you been driving truck? I said, about 3 months. He said, what? I said, I've been driving truck about 3 months at the time. He said, oh, you're very good. He said, why didn't you do what the dozer guy said? I said, because he is speaking a language I didn't recognize yet. Oh, I recognized. I just hadn't learned to interpret it. He said, what do you mean? I said, he is speaking that language that we Albertans, we don't know what they're saying. He said, it's called Newfoundlandese. He said, he says, so is that why you didn't do it? I said, I didn't know what the hell he was saying. Didn't have a clue. Not a clue. And that dozer guy did it on purpose. About 4 nights later, I was sitting behind him, and he was flirting with a girl on across the aisle on the bus, and I understood every word he said. It was perfect English. Uh, my friend Martin, he said, "Of course we had English." I said, "Did you attend?" But anyways, okay, East Coast. That's another whole voting block. I remember 10 years ago or so, there was an election going on. I said, sure as hell gonna vote those liberals out from down east, aren't you? Martin said, what? I said, I looked at him. I said, Martin, you're enlightened. You're a believer in the God of the Bible. I said, you're not telling me you're voting liberal. Martin said, that's our only choice. I said, no, Martin, you could vote conservative. He said, no, no, we can't. Because the East Coast relies on the federal liberal government and the handouts that they, the Canadian federal liberal, too many conservatives as well, um, hand out. The globalists of Canada hand out. Martin said, they buy our vote. Well, so we have so much going on in Canada, and we're getting ready to get the hell out of Dodge because we can't stay here because Canada does not want us here. Carney even tried to pick a war with Donald J. Trump in the States. Have, have you ever heard of anything so stupid as a banker who doesn't know how to make money? He runs short, Carney runs short of money, he just makes more. Okay, listen, my Indian friends, okay, and every other Albertan, especially the immigrants to Alberta, you have got to uh, get on YouTube and look up Native Ways Chronicles and study and learn, especially the Indians. This is for the Indians, okay? Feathers, okay? Indians. You've got to learn what your ancestors did to you. They sold you out, but they sold you out because, in their mind's eye, the only hope for Indians in Canada was to become integrated, and that's what the treaties were for, to give guidelines for integration. They 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 weren't guidelines for how the Indians could milk the Canadian federal Liberal government. But they learned how to milk her real good. Let me tell you, dear Lord, last year alone, uh, remember the right at the start, treaties at the start. Indians were paid for their land $12 per person per year forever. Queen said forever. Okay. And, uh, and those Indians went along with it because, oh, some would say, well, because they didn't know any better. No, they did know better. They knew that integration was the only hope for Canadians to stand together. Well, we have since found that Canada does not want to stand together. Canada wants to milk Western Canada, Alberta, and buy votes on the East Coast, buy votes through the Indians, buy votes through the immigrants that Canada has just let in. Listen, you have a politician has to buy votes. You don't have a politician. You have a chameleon. Change color. No matter the group they are in, they're going to change color and blend in. Well, I don't know when politicians could blend in with, unless they were an empty pan of bowls that had not yet been cleaned. So, God bless you. Thank you for uh, your kindness. Watching the old cowboy in the north. You're not going to get out of this life alive. You're going to have to deal with the issue of the question Jesus asked: whom do you say that I am? You're going to have to figure that one out. Sooner the better. Okay. Oh, have I vented my spleen? God says I've done a pretty good job so far. Uh, I I think I'm done on this subject. The most important video you will ever watch as a Canadian, former Canadian, and independent Albertan is Native, okay, title, Native Way Chronicles. The man will speak truth. My friend, I asked him, I said, "Do you ever watch the bloody treaties? You ever read them?" He said, "No." He said, "You know who started that whole treaty thing?" I said, "I don't have a clue." He said, uh, he said, "The Métis." I said, "What?" He said, "The Métis, they wanted the treaties. Uh, with the rest of us Indians, well, he wasn't even here then. I mean, dear Lord. Uh, the rest of us didn't want treaties. It's all the Métis' fault, I guess. In life, if you can blame someone else for anything, you don't have to own up to anything. Okay, sounds an awful lot like being a politician. I'm just saying. God bless. Y'all take care. Over and out. Fort McMurray, the oil sands. Thank you. God bless. Y'all take care.